So, very good evening to all of you. Voice is audible? Okay. So, myself, Paresh Karya, welcome all of you on behalf of Ahmedabad Management Association for today's evening talk of Mr. Udit on digital transformation. Very interesting topic, so get ready to listen, Mr. Udit. Okay. So, before Mr. Udit start his presentation, it's my privilege and all of us would like to know him. So brief profile of Mr. Udit. Let us know. How many of you know Mr. Udit here? Can you raise your hand? Okay. So Mr. Udit, you are going to get brand equity up today. Okay. So Mr. Udit is Chief Digital Growth Officer at Siemens Power Services. Okay. As a Chief Digital Growth Officer, his job is lead assessment, implementation and commercialization of technology to grow the top line through a suite of digital product, services and platform. So mainly is in digital side, digital product services platform. In this process, he attracted and retained the best talent globally in building beyond the core portfolio of his company and profession. Mr. Udit is having more than 14 years of executive experience. He has held business in energy, oil and gas, telecom, automotive, professional services and aerospace sector to produce and create a digital and IT capabilities, leading to a sustainable growth trajectory. He is with servant leadership, have filled the gap between ideation and the implementation while building a strong value chain for the customers and the employees. Mr. Udit, prior experience also includes the revenue assurance, project management and global strategic program management. Very big experience and exposure in this field. He is having a passion about energy and aerospace economies. He believes in technology being the enabler to help business reimagine their future and leave a mark out there. He is having a specialties in digital business, digital transformation, exploratory, predictive and causal analytics, innovation strategy, M&A, inorganic growth, cultural evaluation, and plenty of things. I think there is a long list, Mr. Udit. So this is where I can tell. He is also having certificates in PMP and CISA. So Mr. Udit has a lot of experience, exposure. So we have today privilege and our right also to listen to him more instead of spending more time. So Mr. Udit, before we take on the evening journey talk, on behalf of audience and AMA, would like to welcome with the flower. So I request Mr. Udit now to start the talk on the digital transformation. He will be spending around 45 minutes on presentation. After that, we'll have a Q&A. So if you have any questions, please make a note of it. And maybe once the program is over, if anybody want to connect with him separately, another 10-15 minutes. So this is how the chronology of this program. So my thank you note in advance to all of you. Mr. Udit, please, you can start now.
Well, good evening, all of you. Hope you all can hear me well. I'm probably going to be standing here is what I've been told. Thank you, Mr. Karya. Thank you, AMA, for organizing this event and giving this opportunity to come and talk to all of you. It's always a pleasure to be back home in Ahmedabad and to have this wonderful opportunity to talk to all of you and share the insights is what I'm looking for. So the way I've kind of thought about this event today and this talk is I wanted to kind of demystify digital transformation and digital disruption for all of you, because there is a lot of buzz around this. People, when they hear about this, sometimes do not know where to start, what to do, and where to end. So I've tried to take the glamour out and walk you guys through the process. What I wanted to kind of cover was a different a theme. I'll talk about this, but I thought of a story to start today with all of you. So here what happens is there's this lady that's in an air balloon going to some destination, and she's lost. And she descends down to almost like 10 meters or 15 meters and finds this guy standing down below and says, hey, I am lost. I'm going to this place. Can you tell me how do I get there? And this guy says, sure, I can help you. You are 15 meters above the ground right now with 105 degree longitude and 59 degree latitude, and that's basically the wind pressure that you have, and this is the direction you are going. And she says, well, you've given me all this technical information, which is absolutely correct, I don't doubt about it, but it has not helped me a bit, and it's not taking me to where I need to be. And by the way, talking to you, I've spent 15 minutes and wasted my time. So you surely must be somebody who's working in digital space. And this guy says, for sure, but what I think is you probably are in management. And she says, well, I am. And he says, she says, how can you say that? And he says, well, first of all, you have no idea where you are and where you're going. Second is, you have made a commitment to somebody, you're going to be there, and you don't know how to fulfill it. The third is, you're looking for help from somebody down below, and apparently it's my fault. So that's the story. But jokes apart, what I wanted to kind of talk about is I wanted to give you guys some key insights of what digital is, what digital disruption is, what digital transformation is. And then let's talk about what it actually is. Why should anybody here or anybody in the world right now be bothered about it? What is so special about digital? And then I'll give you a framework of how to execute, how to go about this transformation if you had to do it within your own organizations, or if you're going to drive or lead a startup, how do you think about it? Because there are incumbents in this area as well. And then finally, I wanted some food for thought for you all to take back today. So when you get back to work on Monday, you can start doing something about it. So I'll try to cover that. Hopefully it'll take me around 40-45 minutes, and then happy to take questions after that. So let's look at the insights. If you had to take a guess, how many companies today don't even pay attention to a digital disruption that's coming their way? How many industries are there? I would just open it up, keep it interactive. If anybody wants to take a guess of the number of percentage that is going to show up there, take a wild guess. 80? Okay. So in combine, I think the 80 to 90 range is correct. So I'll just show. 45% of the companies today do not worry about a disruption through digital. They are completely complacent in where they are. They are doing the businesses as they are working without worrying about what's going to happen through digital. And this wave is coming fast in every industrial sector. 43% of the companies who are aware that digital is going to transform are actually waiting and watching what the competition is going to do or what the neighbor is going to do. And that's even a more riskier strategy, because you're sitting like a lame duck waiting for somebody to take the action and then to replicate that action, which is even more riskier. And this leap from analog to digital is what actually changes the entire dynamics of the marketplace. So you need to have a lens where you are starting to see the market in a different light than how you have been seeing the market. Think about an Uber. Uber, which has come up with the technology of crowdsourcing, which is nothing but a platform people trying to talk to others who are drivers and consumers has completely disrupted the global taxi cab market. And the willingness to pay, whether you agree or not, has actually gone up. Somebody who wanted to pay to an auto rickshaw driver 50 rupee is willing to pay 100 rupee for that comfort. So they've actually raised your willingness to pay. If you look at Apple in that market space, Apple started with the iPhone for $299, $399. If you look at first iPhone, they've gone all the way to $1299. And that's the willingness to pay of the consumer today. So it is very important for you to understand that digital, the wave of digital is going to transform the marketplaces, and you need to be cautious about it and do not fall into that 87% of the people that are waiting and watching or are not paying attention, because that's where the innovation is taking place outside of this. I wanted to also kind of touch upon and say, if you look at conventional transformation programs, whether you talk about projects and programs within your companies, ERP and other types of IT type programs, the success rate is there, but you would see always 20% of them pretty much fail and 60-65% always set up for moderate results. So you aimed for doing something, you started off with a budget of something, you got the right team, and then eventually you settle for something and say, okay, yeah, sure, I wanted to build a portal, but fine, I'll upload documents here and let people download, and that's it. So you settle for something less. This is even harder when it comes to digital transformation. And the numbers are really, really shocking if you look at that. What the research says right now is only 5% of the initiatives that are overall business transformation initiatives are successful in the space of digital for existing companies. 20% of them literally fail, and 75% actually settle for moderate results. So even worse than conventional transformation. And this is purely because the lack of understanding, the lack of behavioral change, and the cultural change that people in organizations need to follow to get to that point. And we'll talk about that in the frameworks of how to take care of those things so that you can build a successful transformation. But that's the key tough part. So I'll give you my definitions and versions of what this is. Let's talk about digital, only digital. What is digital? When somebody says, hey, we are doing some digital marketing, we are doing some digital initiative, we are doing some digital media. What is digital? Digital is purely the convergence of emerging technologies. Whether you call it cloud computing, you call it IoT, you call it blockchain, you call it whatever. New emerging technologies, when you combine these technologies and connect them together, is what is digital. You have 4G, you have LTE now, 5G is on the horizon, and satellite communication is coming up in the next decade, where SpaceX and OneWeb are going to set up satellites, and you will have direct communications with manufacturing equipment sensors directly to satellites, taking actions of what they need to do. So power plants will be talking to the satellites and so on and so forth. So when these technologies come together and are connected through the best connectivity possible, that is how you start making use of digital. And that is what is digital, nothing else. So when somebody tries to mystify you, demystify that. Now let's understand what is the digital disruption. When the same technology and the business model that you have of a company's existing value proposition. So say for example, today you are trying to sell something, a bottle of water in a given manner to your consumer, and there's a certain value attached to it. If this is changed by technology and it results in a new market position for you, that is digital disruption. Or it results in a new market position for the disruptor, then that is digital disruption. So if somebody comes into your space, uses technology, uses data through connectivity, changes the business model that you are currently working in, that's disruption caused through digital. Classic example, Netflix. I'm sure Netflix is doing great in India. Just last night or today morning, I was reading the article on Bird Box. where Netflix released Bird Box, and pretty much the first week viewership was 45 million accounts. 45 million accounts. Just think about it for a minute. These are accounts, not users. So even if you think about one account having 2 to 3 users, you're talking about 90 to 100 million viewership. It's a $14 account of Netflix. I'm talking US numbers at this point. That's 45 million accounts is pretty much around $600 million of opening revenue for 1 week of Bird Box through Netflix. It's actually bigger than the collection of Aquaman in theaters. That's what we are talking. If you look at the cost of Bird Box, the movie was produced for $19 million with a global reach of 600 million. That's the marketplace that's being changed. And that is what we all need to be conscious about. How do we use that technology with the right distribution channel at the right price point to create a new business model that never existed before, or to disrupt an existing business model? So that's exactly what I want you guys to think about when you talk about digital disruption. Let's take it a step further. Talk about digital transformation. What is transformation? The transformation is actually a conscious decision of the business itself. So you as your business or you as an organization need to think, how will I adopt this technology? How will I deploy this technology, a given technology that you've identified, to change your own business model? But clearly to have performance which is quantifiable. So it's not okay just to say that, well, I did this and my customer interaction is good or better. That doesn't help. You have to say, if I use this technology, if I build this application, if I integrate this application, or if I partner with this technology, that my customer interaction, let's say, is going to be increased by 15% in the next 6 months. I'll be able to reach these many customers and I'll be able to share this much data. When you have that quantifiable, that's where you are going to measure and say, okay, now you're really on the transformational track. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult if you are not able to quantify it. So think about digital disruption and transformation from that perspective, that you are able to convert that into quantifiable performance. That's the key in any circumstance. This one, again, I'm trying to simplify this for all of you. So let's say, now that we know these definitions, what is digital transformation and what is it not? And think about this from your own perspectives, from your own organization. This is not a competition between your IT department and your OT department. When I say OT, I mean operations technology. This is pretty much what happens in big companies, or even companies that are trying to figure out what to do. Because your IT department has been doing something, and now you have some operational technology which you can monetize, the data that you can make money off, and both of them start fighting. Well, this is enterprise architecture and this is OT architecture, and so on and so forth. And what you have to realize is this is a way to synergize those two. You have to figure out how you can take your operational domain know-how, some equipment that you're manufacturing or some service that you're providing, data out of that, combine it with your IT technology, and then make a business out of it. That's what you need to think about. Never let it become a competition, because immediately you will start fighting in silos. It's certainly not a magic wand for top line or bottom line growth. Just because you are doing something that is related to digital and you're trying to transform your own behavior does not mean that you're going to make money immediately. I always keep telling my management, you can have, step 1 is you have a very glamorous product. And what we immediately start talking about is step 3, which is a lot of dollars. What you don't talk about is step 2, of what are you going to do in between. So that's keep in mind, it's not a magic wand. What it is a very systematic growth enabler. For example, if you build an application where your customers are able to talk to you for service requests, how are you going to use that data? How are you going to use that behavior that you're capturing from your customer to upsell? And when you use that behavior to upsell or cross-sell, that is where the enabler comes in. that's where the growth gets triggered. Because now you're saying, okay, this customer has this problem, I know this behavior, this is what I should be offering. And those are the bots that you are starting to see with all the major conglomerates that talk at this point. It is not a race to build new and shiny applications. You may be seeing websites all over the world which are glamorous one after the other. And it's okay not to have a glamorous application. That's fine. But what you should be careful is you are consciously making a decision of where to buy, where to build, and where to integrate. Unnecessary buying is also not useful. Building is also not useful, and integration is also not. So you have to be conscious. And if I get into a little more detail about it, to give you a nugget, if you have a domain expertise in a certain sector, if you are building something where there is a niche that you have, you are sure that a startup will not be able to replicate that. And that's where you go ahead and decide if you want to build. But if you have an area where you are just integrating a payment system by somebody, there's no need to build a payment transaction. You can go to Stripe or you can go to somebody and just integrate a payment technology. That's where you integrate. But you have to understand where to buy, build, and integrate. So think about it from that perspective as well. A lot of companies would love to have a digital group within their company and say, hey, this is a new startup and the startup is great. And we really operate like a startup. But trust me, it's actually not a startup in a large enough company. If you have a big enough enterprise, it's good not to stay in the myth that this is a startup, because it doesn't work like that. You have legal issues and you have processes and you have approvals and so on and so forth. And before that digital group can do anything, it'll pretty much die out. So do not do that. What you should think is this is more of a driver for a cultural change. You should make sure that this gives enough opportunity for your people to think differently, to think boldly, to go try out something where they can fail, and it's fine. I always say, don't only fail fast, but fail forward. Don't fail backward. Because when you fail forward, then you've learned something and you can move on. So think about it from that perspective and treat it more as a cultural change driver. It is really not a playground for somebody. There are data scientists all over the world that will talk to you about mutable and immutable data and left and right, and don't get bogged down by it. It's not a laboratory for somebody. It's actually a laboratory for you to future-proof your business. So when you take up an initiative, think that this is for your future-proofing of the business, rather than thinking about, let me bring in this consultant from PricewaterhouseCoopers and let them try out whatever they want to try. They have told me I have to build a marketplace, so I should build a marketplace. So just keep that in mind, because it's for your own business proofing. And then finally, the slide is cut off here, but what I had mentioned here is it's not a FOMO marketing reaction. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this word FOMO, but it's fear of missing out. So it's really not a fear of missing out marketing reaction. Just because somebody else is doing it, I should also have 2 digital initiatives in my portfolio. And I should be able to tell my customers, yeah, in 6 months we are going to come out with this great app and platform where you'll be able to buy parts online. You should actually think about this as an inevitable reality for your sustainable future. Because if you don't do this and you don't integrate that data, you'll slowly start to lose traction, because somebody else will do it. Today, Google has pretty much hands on all data that you can think of. So they can start a business even if they want. We talk in Siemens, and they say they couldn't even operate a power plant if they want. So think about it from that perspective. So now that we have talked about what it is, let's say, why should we worry about this at this point? What's going on? I mean, all of you, I think, very clearly realized from attending this session, showing that interest, that you are sitting at an epicenter right now where there is a huge conversion happening from analog to digital. Any industry, any sector that has moved from analog to digital has then started to take leaps and bounds of progress as soon as they have moved. Just look at media or entertainment or telecom for that matter. As soon as you move from analog to digital, the leap is immense. There are industries that are ripe at this point. I see construction being very close at this point for that conversion. As soon as construction moves into digital, you will have 3D construction and 3D modeling, which is already starting with virtual reality coming in. That industry is bound for a massive transformation at this point. So what I wanted to show you is, if you just look at what has happened in the last 20 years, the big manufacturing industrial houses that used to hold massive infrastructure and plants are completely wiped out of the market cap map. The top 5 companies that are holding market cap in the US at this point are all software data driven companies. And I don't think that has changed since 2016. It has actually just grown bigger. So every company needs to be a software company at some point in time, and you need to be able to know how you're going to monetize the data that you have or the data that you're trying to collect. And one other thing that I keep telling my folks back home is, you have to think of how will you start sharing your customers' lunch. Because if you don't eat your customers' lunch or share it, you will have so much cost pressure that you will anyways be driven out. So that's one thing you want to keep in mind as you move towards vertically integrated markets, of how are you going to start sharing that upside with the customer.
The data, when you say data, is it your own data or the data that you collect from others?
Could be both. Could be both. It could be data that you harness from your own offering, whether it's a hardware product or service, or it could be market data. Sometimes the best results are combined when you use your data and market data. To give you an example, if you had a sensor on a machine, if you combine that data with weather data, and you say, okay, and now you go and tell your customer that this is what is going to happen because the temperature is going to go up, maybe your fuel intake should increase or decrease or whatever the case may be, and that upside that goes to the customer is what you need to share. And that's how you need to start thinking. Yeah. So I had the incumbent on the right hand side, so just think it that way. But I wanted to kind of give both sides, perspective on both sides. If you are a startup, what is it that you have today that you can use? And if you're an incumbent, what is it that you have in your kitty that you can use to successfully transform yourself? So if you look at startups today, they are immensely successful with innovation because they have nothing to lose, nothing at all to lose. So they'll come in, they'll innovate like crazy left and right. They'll partner with anybody. They'll take money from friends, family, beg, borrow, steal, whatever, and they'll do what they need to do. So innovation is very high on the startup list. They're very risk taking because again, you have nothing to lose. What is there to worry? So they'll take the risk, and they are very agile, very fast. Pretty much startups get formed when a couple of friends or colleagues come together who have the same experience, same expertise, same kind of mindset, and that's what brings the agility because they are of equal minds and they just go at it. So what is it, if you had an organization that's already in market, what do you have to counter this? What you have is capital. They don't have the money. Startups literally starve for money, and you have the money, so use it wisely. Build, buy, integrate. Second is you have the brand. Brand is very important. There is a big difference between you buying a shoe and a Nike shoe. When you buy a Nike shoe, there is a certain value that comes with it. There's a certain assurance that comes with it. So if you have a brand, if your company is known, or even if you are not a well-known company, but you still hold a reputation, that's a big asset. And startups find it very hard to compete with brands. And the third thing that you have, which is the most important commodity in the market, is customers. You have the customer. They do not have customers. But on the other side, they do have the agility. So you have to know these skills of what you have versus what the startup has, and then marry them as needed with who you see in the marketplace. But this is really what is driving the transformation at this point. This is another chart just I wanted to kind of show how the trends look like across industries at this point, both from an inside out disruption and an outside in disruption. You can see industries on the left, traditionally healthcare, utilities. Most of this disruption comes from within because these are extremely high know-how. When you talk about medical field or when you talk about utilities, power plants, etc., there's very high know-how, and that's why the disruption comes from internal. Not to say, I mean, there is some disruption there as well, but still internal. Whereas on the right hand side, you see industries that are completely being disrupted by external people. These are purely software driven, data driven companies coming and disrupting these sectors. And no matter where you fall on the spectrum, you have to be rest assured that there will be somebody who is trying to disrupt that business model. Either today or tomorrow, that's going to happen. And you need to start thinking of it from your side of what that future business looks like. And when I say business model, let me also explain. I fundamentally suggest you think of it in 3 different pillars. You have a cost value pillar, wherein either you will have a cost advantage over others, or you will pass on that cost advantage to your customers in some fashion. The second is purely an experiential value. So let me give you an example on cost, first of all. Think about, I don't know, I'm not a big fan of this Make My Trip thing, but think about something like this. Expedia, Make My Trip, purely cost value differential. I can give you something better at a cheaper price. Experiential value is purely a customized experience for your customer. Think about a Starbucks coffee. When you hold that cup, even though it is just coffee, it is very highly customized for you. And therefore you feel that brand when you hold it. That's the experiential value. The third value pillar, I would say, is think about platform value, which is purely just the power of networks. So you, your vendors, your suppliers, your customers, their networks, if you leverage this power of network, what is the data that you can generate and how can you monetize that data? That's purely platform value. You can take Google, Facebook, any of them as an example. This is purely a platform value. And then every business model is built on top of platforms. The core business is purely platform management. Yeah? So those are the 3 things I would say keep in mind when I say business models. And these are 3, and it could be a combination of these 3 as well, depending on which space you are playing in. So now I wanted to talk about how do you go about this. So we've looked at the definitions, you've looked at why you should be worried about digital. So if you had to, where would you start? Where would you go? And I wanted to give you a framework that I typically use. So it's easier, and I've kind of simplified that as well. But I came across this Dilbert that I wanted to also share here. I mean, sometimes this is the approach that companies would take. That I want to disrupt something, I want to do something new. You would go to a summer intern and say, hey, we want to digitally transform ourselves. Here's a project for you. Let's do it in 30 days, and we'll change the whole organization. And that literally does not work, because this kind of transformation is really not time bound. It's more of a journey, as we talked about. The summer intern for sure doesn't have any budget or autonomy to do anything in the company. So you're just wasting your time and his or her time getting something like this done. So again, avoid something like this, but that's what I've seen sometimes happening. So what's this framework? I put it down in 3 different ladders. First is, when you want to start something like this, before going about it, create a climate for it. And when I say create a climate for it, realize the fact that there is urgency, realize the fact that there is a need to do this. You're just not doing this for the sake of it. You have to do this because you don't know what your future business looks like, and you don't know where your next competition is coming from. It could come from any direction. You have no idea. So create that urgency for you and your team members. Form the right coalition. When I say coalition, look at your team and find out people who are willing to take the risk. People who are not afraid of failing. people who are willing to think that our business could look different or should be different in future. That is very, very important. If you are not able to think that your business will be different, no point. And if you are complacent saying what is going on is fine and everything is hunky-dory, then there is no point. So form that coalition, build that team, and create a vision. Talk about what is it that you will be looking like in the future. What do you want to look like? You want to be a company that is going to be software driven. You want to be a company that is going to reach out to X number of customers in X markets for this or that. Whatever your vision is, but create a bold vision when you look at these technologies and when you want to adopt these technologies. Once the climate is done, the next ladder that I would say is you communicate this vision. Most of the organizations that I have seen that lack successful execution is where the person at the last level in the company does not have any idea why a given initiative is being triggered. And because that person is not part of the value chain, you have no results at the end, because that person doesn't even understand why you are building a digital marketing platform when I am the one talking to the customer with catalog in my hand. And there is a complete disconnect between the two. But if you explain the person that, look, while we are building the catalogs, we will give you access to the information of how many catalogs has your customer actually looked at in advance before your meeting to the customer. And so you will be able to better talk with your customer about the interest that he or she has. And then we'll give you additional material on top, which is customizable to say, hey, if you want to give a special discount, this is the information, and all that will be in real time on your digital platform, whether it's on mobile or iPad or so on and so forth. Then the sales guy knows why you're doing something. So create the vision, talk about the vision, and try to bring everybody into that vision. And that is very, very key. That's why I said it's more of a cultural change than more of a change management activity. It's really the mindset. Think about a digital worker of the future. How will that person work? If you have a person going in the field to repair something, and that person has a mobile phone, and the instruction is going to come on the mobile phone of what to do next, help that person understand that that's how it's going to change his or her life. Because that's exactly what they're interested in. How will this affect me? How will this affect my customer? And that needs to be very clear. Empower the action. When you do that, give the authority, give the autonomy to people to take certain actions in certain systematic manner. Because if you don't empower the action and everything is centralized, it is very hard for these people to actually adopt that change and execute that change. So you gotta decentralize to some degree and let them take the action. Let them fail. And you need to have the appetite as leaders in the organization to be able to fail and let that failure happen, because that will teach you something. Don't wait for somebody else to fail, learn and benefit, and you wait and watch the game, because you have missed the boat by that time. And then finally, I would also say in that segment is create quick wins. In any organization, in any company, there are always initiatives where you are trying to do something where you're moving on the digital track. Find those things out. What are they? Why are they being done? Create those quick wins for the teams, for your customers, and extract the value. Once you do that, you will start to automatically realize the confidence, as well as you will start to realize that you have people who can do that. You will not have to go and find those people somewhere. You will have them within your teams, within your colleagues, within your seniors, whoever they are. But create those quick wins, identify what they are, and bring them into the fold. The third is what I call is sustain that change. Meaning once you have identified the win, build on that change. Build incrementally, pivot if you need to. You may have started off thinking that I'm going to build X or I'm going to do Y. And if you go midway, you realize a certain milestone and you say, well, that's not working. I probably need to stop that or move in another direction. Do that. Be agile, but build on that change. Continuously keep building on the change. And then finally make it stick. When I say make it stick, you may have other initiatives, you may have other processes, you may have other methods of doing things, which you may have to shut down. Do that. and make your initiative stick. Because if you keep other channels open, people will always gravitate towards something that's comfortable to them. So if you have a manual catalog and you've created an online catalog and somebody is used to having a manual catalog in the bag, they will keep roaming around with that. And they will not know that you have superseded a part, and that information will never reach them. In today's day and age, the customer will go online and find it in some marketplace and just buy it. You've lost the business. So think about that aspect and keep it sticking. In this slide, what I want to show to you is there are different types of changes, there are different types of initiatives that you may do, but how do you extract the maximum value? So in the x-axis here, I'm talking about extent of transformation, whether this is a little small change that you are doing, or are you fundamentally changing something? And on the y-axis here, I'm talking about the extent of change. Is it a siloed autonomous change, or is it a highly entangled change? When I say highly entangled, you're talking about something you're changing in operations that's going to affect marketing. You're changing something in marketing that's going to affect organizational setup or legal and so on and so forth. That's highly entangled. And you need to start thinking for the maximum value to be derived out of a transformation project or a digital initiative that you're doing is you need to go to the rightmost quadrant on the top. And how do you do that? Is if you do plain changes, that's purely change management. You could even do blanket adjustments. You can say from tomorrow morning, I will stop approving everything below 5,000 rupees. And you're free to go and do what you need below 5,000, and that's fine. That's a blanket change. But again, that's change management. It's really not a digital transformation. If you do one digital initiative here and there in a pocket somewhere in the silo, which is not integrated to anything, again, that's purely change management. You really don't get any value out of it. And I'm talking to you about this because when you approve initiatives, when you are part of initiatives, when you select initiatives, think about which quadrant do they lie. Where you want to be is the max right-hand side quadrant, which is a purely business transformation quadrant, wherein you see if I change one thing, how will my marketing guy get affected? How will my sales guy get affected? How will my operations get affected? So on and so forth. Does not mean that all your initiatives have to be big bang, but any change that you do has to be moving towards that direction. Unless it is affecting different quadrants, it's really not going to give you that value. And think customer all the time, right? Now there's the word that we have in the US now is customer obsessed. Even customer driven is gone. You're obsessed now. I don't know, maybe the next level is something else, but we are pretty much obsessed at this point. So think about that as well. When I mean by orchestration, just to give you an idea, think about your organization, your operations, as I talked about, your engagement, go to market, and every change initiative that you execute should affect some or all of these levers. That is what is the orchestration that I meant when I mentioned up above in the previous slide. And again, value drivers, as I said, you have cost values, experiential values, and platform values. And I'll talk about strategy in the next slide. So how does all of this come together? So I put together this picture for you, which says you have a digital vortex which tells you where you are right now in the transformational phase, wherever your industry is or wherever your function is. This pretty much answers the question of why are you transforming. You are starting to see a threat, or you are starting to see a vacancy. Maybe the vacancy says there's an opportunity for you to make more money, there's a new business model, fine. So wherever you are in the vortex, that answers the question of why are you transforming. Once you have believed or answered the question on why you are transforming, you're trying to think about what are you transforming. Are you looking at the cost? Are you looking at building experience? Or are you looking at building a platform value? What is it that you will focus on? You need to be clear on that right from the start. You cannot go in thinking that I will build a platform and then say, well, I'm going to now pivot and start saving cost. If you're building the platform, your goal is footprint, number of users, number of transactions, etc. When you're doing cost, your goals are completely different. So think about what are you transforming? Once you have looked at that, then comes the strategy. Let me spend a few minutes on the strategy. the strategy works in this way. So for example, you have observed a vacancy in the market, that there is a sweet spot where you think customers are willing to pay for a given offering, and if you digitally offer that service, you can fill that vacancy. So you would target the vacancy, you would come in to disrupt in a given circumstance even your own business model. Let me give you an example. You are selling, I'll take the example of service, maybe you're selling parts. Now you have a method of selling parts. You call up the customer, there are regular meetings, you go them, show your catalogs and so on and so forth. But now you create an online medium where you're going to offer the parts, and the customer has a full choice of going and buying it online or to call your sales guy and buy it. So there are two channels. Now you are under the impression that this will disrupt your existing model of people calling your sales guy and people will just buy online, right? You need to be cautious enough and smart enough to be able to disrupt your own model and say, even if it disrupts my model, I am positive that this gives me enough leverage to increase my business. Or I would experiment, if you're not positive yet, to see if I can increase the business. But you go in with that vacancy and try to disrupt your own business if that need arises. But you should be able to. If you can, you further go into the ladder and you occupy that spot. When you occupy the spot, you need to create a differentiator, which says, what is it that makes you different now in that space of selling parts for a given industrial equipment in that market. So you have to create a differentiator so you can hold that spot, because immediately somebody will replicate. When somebody sees that, oh, now you can do this easily, they will come in and replicate quick. And replication happens in 3 months, 4 months. There are developers everywhere in the world, especially India, I don't have to say. So you find the vacancy, you move in, you occupy, you disrupt and you occupy. On the other side, if there is a competition, what they would do is they would come in and do the same. But once you occupy, you got to see how you can harvest. When I say you harvest, you're basically looking at that opportunity and maximizing as much revenue as possible. If you can't do that, and if that starts to become difficult, you may even want to retreat. When it says retreat, what I mean is not completely come out of the business, but to hold on to a niche and let the other segment go. Because otherwise, if you keep holding on to the other segment, it's going to be harder and harder from a cost standpoint for you to hold on, and it'll drain all the other revenue margins that you have on the other segments. So you have to decide which vacancies to go after, which opportunities to harvest and retreat, and which to disrupt and occupy. And you need to continuously look at this model as more and more disruption comes in, because the wave that comes in from a digital standpoint can completely uproot your business. And that is what you need to think about. Once that happens, how you're going to do that is you have to be hyper aware. So you have to be aware of what technology exists, what it can do, what areas it is being used in. So if blockchain is coming into financial services, and distributed ledgers are picking up with banks, and JP Morgan has already made an investment there, you have to start thinking how this will affect your business if you are in financial services. And you need to be hyper aware of it. Informed decision making as well as fast execution. Speed is critical when it comes to digital. If you don't have the speed, you are not able to make quick decisions, you are out of the game. Because people make very fast decisions if you compare where the Western world is and how India is catching up now. So speed is absolutely important there. And that also helps you then look at the orchestration of how you're going to execute, is how you need to shape up the operations and people and teams and structure on your side so that you can build that kind of a model and you can execute those 8 steps that I showed you above. Yeah. So that's the how part. And so now what? Here actually I wanted to kind of spend some time to give you guys some thoughts. When you go back Monday morning, you can think about what is it that you can start with as 2 or 3 things, so that you can think about if I wanted to get into a transformational initiative, do I really even have the base ready or not? And the first thing here is the values are clearly changing from the old to the new. If you look on the left hand side, these are traditionally old skill sets, traditional skill sets, values that we today look at. And the new skill sets are on the right. You need to start looking at where you are on the spectrum and how will you move towards the new skills. For example, you may be very good at perfection, your product is absolutely fantastic, your quality process is great, and it's a flawless execution in terms of delivery, but you lack speed. And now, today's day and age, when new businesses are coming in with technology, you need speed. So how will you build that skill set into your organization? How will you bring speed into your organization? It's not easy to change the mindset and the behavior of people who are not used to speed, because you will have to let go quality to some degree. And where will you let go is the question. How will you build quick prototypes? How will you build quick MVPs? How will you get to market quicker to understand whether that product sticks or doesn't stick? So speed is the trade-off, and you need to see how you can move towards the speed. Same thing with using networks. Today you may be very confident of leading the team. You may have the best people, and you say, yeah, I'm absolutely positive that if I give this command, my team will follow, they'll jump the hill, and we'll get it done. But are they able to work with networks? Are they able to partner with the right forces? Because there will be times where you will not be able to achieve something just on your own skill set within your organization. You may have to partner for technology, you may have to partner for data, you may have to partner for something else. Are they able to think in networks? Are they able to say, hey, I don't know this, maybe he knows or she knows, maybe let's partner with them, see if we can create a joint product. One of the things that I'm pushing right now back home is customer co-creation. What I am talking to my folks is, let's create something with the customer. I've even moved past creating anything myself now, saying we bring the customer in and we talk about a unique problem that they have. Let us see what domain expertise we can bring to the table. You look at computational science, you look at maths, and you look at technology. Let's bring the domains together, see what we can create together. And if the customer is part of creation, even better. And you can even offer the customer a business model saying, we'll go to market together. If we make money, sure, you take the upside and we'll take the upside as well. Whatever framework works. But those are the new business models you need to start thinking about. How will you start sharing? How will you involve your customer? How will you start eating that lunch? So think about these skills and see how you can start moving to the right. The other thing is, there was this survey done by the Global Institute of Digital Business Transformation Group with the IMD Institute in Singapore and in Europe. They had surveyed about 11,000 CEOs, CTOs, CIOs, C-suite generally, and they basically asked the question of how confident are you that you have digital leaders, you have people who can drive these things, because this is the mindset change. And almost, as you see, 29% of the response was, we are fairly confident we have people who understand technology, who can talk the language, who can really motivate people, inspire others, and create a vision, and we can move forward of what our company looks like in the next 5 years. 28% pretty much said, the values are not coming up here, but 28% said, we have traditional leaders, and we do not have any digital skills at this point. We don't have a digital group in our company. Nobody's focusing on it. We are happy where we are. But almost the balance, which is around 43 to 44% or something, basically said we are in transition phase. That means we are seeking to bring digital leaders in our organization, or we are building digital skill sets within our organization, so we don't get disrupted, so that we are at least future-proofing ourselves as we go forward. But what I wanted you to take away today is, how will you make sure that if you have to build this kind of transition into digital leadership, what is it that you need in your team? And this is what I wanted to mention. You have to look at these characteristics of digital leaders as they come up into your organization. Technology is changing so fast that you have to have humility. You will never, if somebody comes and says, I am a technologist, I know everything about technology, I can tell you the best stack you can build this on, that's bogus. That's bullshit right there. Sorry, mind my language. But point is, you have to have humility to accept the fact that I don't know everything and I'm open to learning. If there's a new developer that's coming me and telling that something new can be done, sure, I'm open to learning. So that's very key. The second thing is you need to be adaptable. If something has not worked, that is fine. Do not worry about failures. If it didn't work, it's okay. You learned something, but fail forward. Adapt, move. You can do 2-week sprints and say, I'll do something in 2 weeks, quickly build a site up, quickly build an app up, quickly integrate this data point and see if this makes sense for me to monetize it, or integrate a payment system and so on and so forth. But do not worry about adaptability. You got to be agile in this mindset. The third thing is have people that are visionary, people who can see the business different, people who are willing to see the business differently, of what the future looks like. I was talking to somebody at Facebook recently and they said, well, we are typically a social media company, but we are actually a very large infrastructure company. And I said, what do you mean by that? And they said, well, the entire communication infrastructure that works, that Facebook uses is owned by Facebook. And we have service providers that go and maintain all the cable lines and this and that and satellites and so on and so forth. So it's a huge communication infrastructure company in the light of a social media company. Social media comes all on top. And that's where you start to realize, how are these companies able to pay $15 million or $16 million for WhatsApp? Wherein WhatsApp is not even making any money at this point, or Waze is not making any money for Google. But execution and scalability is not the issue. Issue is how you will be able to adapt and vision out what your future looks like. So think differently, see how your business would be in the future, and that is what is important. And then finally, stay engaged. The digital leaders that come in 6 months and take a status report, attend board meetings, are not the ones that you want. You want people who are at least engaged at the ground level to say, if there is an initiative, how is that initiative linked to something else? Is it showing results? Are there value propositions that are driving results? How are you integrating with partners? What is the adoption, and so on and so forth? You really have to be engaged with your team. So you need to have these characteristics. So think about this when you look at your own teams, you look at your own people, you look at your own organization. And then finally, I wanted to talk about and share something that I say, don't ask the wrong questions, ask the right questions. Sometimes these are impact questions, but it makes others think for 5 seconds, and that's where you've got them. Ask the right question. I have a buddy at Google, and he always tells me, Udit, he says, at Google, we have no issues at all scaling. We have no issues building anything. You can give us any problem and we'll build it. He says the toughest problem we have at Google, and that's what the management keeps challenging, is to get the first 5 questions right about the product. He says if you get the first 5 questions right about the product, you are done. Scaling is no issue. You'll get as many number of people Google wants, they'll hire and they'll get it done. No issue at all. But ask the right question. And what I mean by that is, don't ask how you can become more digital. There is nothing like becoming more digital. You need to ask, how will you use digital to improve your own performance? Now that you understand what digital is, how will you use it to improve the performance of your own business? Do not ask what is your digital strategy. What are you doing nowadays for becoming more digital, and so on and so forth. You should ask the question of how you are going to use digital to build a more agile business. How will your business be able to better respond using technology? And that is the question you need to ask. Don't ask how I can digitize a function. I have this huge Salesforce team on the ground, and they always keep complaining, and I want to build something for them so that they stop nagging. That's not the approach. think about how your entire business orchestration and how your entire organization can be digitized so that each other can leverage off the data that everyone is gathering. Because your management is gathering data, your sales guy is gathering the data, your legal team is, and market is. So think about how everybody will leverage. Yeah. So with that, I think I had everything covered. I have my contacts in the deck. They're not showing here correctly, but I'm happy to share this if anybody wants. And again, would like to thank all of you for taking time this Saturday evening to come and listen to this. Sure. Thank you so much, all of you.
So I think big thank you to all of you, but I need another 1 minute, not more, just to have a sweet memory on behalf of this audience and AMA. This memento for you. Udit. And maybe after this session, if I know I have not allowed you to ask so many questions, Udit will be here. You can face-to-face connect with him. You can take his contact detail, which is not visible in the presentation. And with this, if you can also give the feedback form, which will be great for me and Udit together. We have given the feedback. So with this, I say big thank you to all of you. Thank you so much.